Hi, everybody. It is June 17th, 2026, and I'm just testing this out because we're streaming from Rumble today, and I'm just seeing if this actually works here. And again, this is a whole new test run. I've never streamed from Rumble. Don't even know if this is working, honestly, but we're trying it out. Honestly, not sure if it is. Stream. Looks like we should be. So again, kind of interesting. I've never done this before. Says that we're not going yet. Interesting. How do we do this? Stream. There we go. Looks like we are streaming. Cool. Kind of interesting. So at the end of the day, this is the news that we're going to be breaking into. We're going to be talking about Trump's peace deal with Iran, the 14-point agreement between U.S. and Iran. And I think it's going to be an interesting show, to say the least. I think there's going to be a lot to cover today. And ultimately, the main thing that I want to focus on is really where we're going with this entire Iran war, right? So at the end of the day, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and support the information. Support us on Rumble, support us on YouTube. And at the end of the day, what do you think is going to happen with this Iran war? Do you think Trump is going to stay true to this, to the America First policy of really getting us out of this Iran war strategically, or do you think that Israel's intentions are going to prevail? Overall, I'm curious to see what's going to happen myself, and ultimately, at the end of the day, leave your thoughts below. Again, leave your comments, leave your thoughts, and I'm excited to see where things are heading with it. So again, just checking. It looks like we're streaming from Kick. We're successfully streaming there. Are we streaming on Twitch? I don't know if that's working. Trying to stream from Twitch. We're trying to stream from YouTube as well. So I'm kind of testing this out. Again, I've never streamed directly from Rumble, so we're kind of just playing around with some new stuff. So this is kind of an innovation episode. I see that we're streaming from Rumble and Kick, so we'll just go on with the episode and we'll fix any other problems that we might have tomorrow or something. So ultimately, again, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And again, here we go. Let's break right into it. So again, this is the big news of the day. So again, the 14-point peace deal with Iran. Full text of the 14-point agreement between the U.S. and Iran. The U.S. and Iran are expected to officially sign a Memorandum of Understanding on the Friday night that lays out the terms of an extended 60-day ceasefire that will allow for further negotiations to take place. Hours after an updated version of the 14-point agreement was leaked to some media outlets, a senior U.S. administration official read out the memorandum, which outlines commitments aimed to ensure the full toll-free reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and the termination of military operations on all fronts. So, again, rather interesting when we see all of this happening. The agreement asserts that Iran can never develop a nuclear weapon, a promise that the regime has made in the past. The agreement states that the U.S. and Iran will address Iran's existing stockpile of enriched material with the minimum methodology to be down blending on site under the supervision of the inspectors with the International Atomic Energy Agency. God, that's kind of a mouthful. So again, here's a little clip from that. Before we get into that, just going to take a quick pause here, be right back. Just going to test and see if everything's working correctly here. Okay, so we're back. So again, it looks like I was having some trouble streaming directly to Twitch. Got to work on that. And then we have to fix this stream with really ultimately, again, we got to find our page here again. We're kind of navigating around. Looks like we were streaming correctly from Kick. So again, you could watch us on Kick. You can watch on Rumble, YouTube, and again, sorry, had to check and make sure all of this was working. This is kind of a new test run. We're seeing what it's like to kind of stream directly from Rumble so I can multicast on different platforms here, because YouTube has been like atrocious about, honestly, censorship, and so we're not really connected there. Something weird happened when I was setting it up. But anyways, we'll just go on. It looks like we're also streaming from X too. So again, be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. Let's get on with the information, and we'll get better at this. This is a brand new thing that we're doing here with Rumble. So again, let's take a listen to this video. This is Donald Trump saying the U.S. will bomb the hell out of Iran if Iran doesn't behave, was the correct terminology he used here. So again, let's check this video out.
It's a memorandum of understanding. If it doesn't get done in 60 days, that's all right. We go back to bombing. I let him know. I said, look, if you don't adhere to the agreement, I don't want to do that, but we're going to bomb the hell out of you. And I don't think that they're going to veer from the agreement. What else am I going to do? Am I going to say I'm going to take you to court? Let me take you to court. Let me sue you. No, we're going to bomb the hell out of them if they violate the agreement.
So again, that was Trump. That was just one clip. We got a lot of clips that we're going to cover of Trump at this G7 summit. And again, he was in France, basically totally flipped on Israel. So really, Trump is now America first again, and Israel's been hating it. It's been interesting to see the developments of that. It also indicates that Tehran may be able to tap into a $300 billion investment fund for Iran's reconstruction and economic development, provided it meets commitments laid out in a final deal. The negotiations would also set out a plan for the lifting of all U.S. sanctions against Iran in an agreed-upon schedule. A senior U.S. official stressed that the U.S. term is clear-eyed about what it was agreeing to and what it was expecting out of Iran, and that President Donald Trump is prepared to restart military action if needed. If Iran actually does all the things they're telling you, this would be a home run deal, the official says. You could say that the MOU is final, but either side can walk away at any time until you really have some fulsome binding deal. So again, these are the 14 points of the Memorandum of Understanding. So again, the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran and their allies in the current war, by signing this MOU, declared the immediate and permanent termination of military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon, and undertake from now on not to initiate any war on military operations against each other, and to refrain from the threat or use of force against each other, and ensuring territorial integrity and sovereignty of Lebanon. The final deal will confirm the permanent termination of the war on all fronts, including in Lebanon, and other provisions of this paragraph. So that's part of it, is that the war on Lebanon is going to end. Will Israel really adhere to that? Honestly, who really knows? The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran undertake to respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and to refrain from interfering in each other's internal affairs. Number 3, the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran continue to negotiate and achieve the final deal in a maximum of 60 days, expendable with mutual consent. Number 4 is, immediately upon the signing of this MOU, the United States of America will begin the removal of its naval blockade and any disturbances or impediments against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and will fully end the naval blockade within 30 days. During this period, the traffic of vessels will be in proportion to the numbers of pre-war traffic being resorted to the Islamic Republic of Iran. The United States of America further undertakes to remove its forces from the proximity of the Islamic Republic of Iran within 30 days of the final deal. Number 5, upon the signing of the MOU, the Islamic Republic of Iran will make arrangements using the best efforts of the safe passage of commercial vessels with no charge for 60 days only from the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman, and vice versa. The traffic of commercial vessels will immediately start, and considering the need for removing the technical and military obstacles and demanding by the Islamic Republic of Iran will be instated within 30 days. The Islamic Republic of Iran will conduct dialogue with the Sultanate of Oman to define the future administration of the maritime services in the Strait of Hormuz, in discussion with the other Persian Gulf littoral states, and in line with the applicable international law and the sovereign rights of the coastal states of the Strait of Hormuz. Number 6, the United States of America undertakes the regional partners to develop a definitive, mutually agreed upon plan with at least USD of $300 billion for the reconstruction and economic development of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The mechanism for the implementation of this plan will be finalized as part of the final deal within 60 days, all requiring licenses, waivers, and permissions needed for the relevant financial transactions that will be granted by the United States. Number 7, United States of America undertakes to terminate all types of sanctions against the Islamic Republic of Iran. So all types of sanctions. So this was one of the main demands of the entire Islamic Republic of Iran, was to end these sanctions against the Islamic Republic, including the United Nations Security Council resolutions, the IAEA Board of Governors resolutions, and all unilateral U.S. sanctions, primary and secondary, in the agreed-upon schedule as part of the final deal. The Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States of America acknowledge the critical importance of the sanctions termination issue above mentioned and expressed in the intentions to immediately address these issues in the negotiations in order to achieve mutual agreement on them. Wow, so we're giving Iran like everything they want here. Number 8, the Islamic Republic of Iran reaffirms that it shall not produce or develop nuclear weapons. So again, this sounds like this is the Iranians. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran have agreed to resolve the disposition of stockpile enriched material pursuant to a mechanism that will be mutually agreed upon in accordance to the schedule mentioned in paragraph 7, with the minimum methodology to be downblending on site under supervision of the IAEA. The two parties also agreed to discuss the issue of enrichment and other mutually agreed matters related to the Islamic Republics of Iran's nuclear needs based on satisfactory framework and agreed upon in the final deal. The final deal will confirm the provisions of the paragraph. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran acknowledge that the critical importance of the nuclear issues above mentioned and express their intention to immediately address these issues in negotiations or in order to achieve mutual agreement on them. Number 9, pending the final deal, the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran agree to maintain the status quo. Lost my spot there. The Islamic Republic of Iran will maintain current status quo of its nuclear program, and the United States of America will not impose any new sanctions and will not deploy additional forces in the region. Number 10, the United States of America undertakes that immediately upon the signing of this MOU and until the termination of sanctions, the U.S. Department of Treasury will issue waivers of the export of Iranian crude oil, petroleum products and derivatives, and all associated services, including banking transactions, insurances, transportation, etc. Number 11, the United States undertakes to make fully available for the use of frozen and restricted funds and assets of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So again, this sounds like it's highly one-sided. We're giving the Iranians almost everything that they asked for, and I think this is a rather good thing. Upon the implementation of the MOU, the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran will mutually agree on the procedures related to the release of these funds during the negotiations. Such funds, whether retained in the original account or transferred, shall be made fully usable for payment to any and ultimate beneficiary designated by the Central Bank of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The United States of America undertakes to issue all the necessary licenses and authorizations accordingly. Number 12, the United States of America and the IRGC agree that an executive mechanism will be established to monitor the successful implementation of this MOU and the future compliance of the final deal. Number 13 of the 14-point deal. After signing this MOU, and subject to the beginning of the implementation of paragraphs 1, 4, 5, 10, and 11 of this MOU, the continuing implementation of these measures, the United States of America and Islamic Republic of Iran will start negotiations regarding the final deal exclusively on the other paragraphs. And then 14, the final deal will be endorsed by a binding United Nations Security Council resolution. So this does sound like it is actually an official possibility that this could be the end of this entire Iran war. Possibly. I mean, again, a lot of this depends on Israel and whether or not they're willing to actually adhere to this agreement where they would have to stop bombing Lebanon. And again, when you look at all of this, it's rather interesting to see where all of this is going. Okay, so again, in my opinion, it all depends on really whether or not Trump is going to stay America first or whether he's going to basically switch up and, remain loyal to the Israeli causes and everything that they're trying to do. So again, when we look at all of this, quite interesting. The Middle East Crisis Live, Iran agrees to destroy enriched uranium stockpile. Memorandum read out by U.S. officials says. Senior U.S. officials read out the MOU text to journalists insisting downblending is a starting point. Deal says sanctions relief is tied to nuclear action. So again, when we look at this timeline, 3 hours ago, we have all of this. U.S. Senator slams Trump's Iran deal as worst foreign policy blunder in decades. I don't agree with that at all. I think this is probably some of the best news we could have had for the United States, in all honesty. And then 4 hours ago, Trump says 60 days isn't a hard deadline. And then Tehran floats a presidential signing of the MOU in Geneva. This is taking place in Geneva, too. So that's big news. And then 5 hours ago, 60 days to negotiate, but deal is fragile. And so, again, when we look at the timeline, Howard Lunnick isn't really too happy about it when we look at him. Rubio doesn't look too happy either. But ultimately, Trump's doing what he needs to do in order to maintain the entire U.S. economy and basically keep this economy afloat, if you ask me, in my opinion. So I think it's rather necessary. We need to be doing this. The U.S. and Iran have come to terms on a preliminary agreement for an immediate and permanent halt to military operations on all fronts, including Lebanon. The deal commits both sides and their allies to cease hostilities and refrain from the threat or use of force against each other, though Israel retains the right to strike back if Hezbollah attacks. So that's if Hezbollah even attacks. But who knows? The Iranians are the Israelis are probably just going to say whenever they want that, hey, Hezbollah attacked us, so we're going to go and bomb more apartment buildings. And this has been one of the things that Trump has been saying, like, hey, this is why we're going to appoint the Syrian leader into the Israeli government or the Lebanese government, because if you guys can't handle Lebanon, then we're going to let the Syrians do it. And again, a lot of people are really contentious about this, but ultimately the Syrians are probably not going to explode entire apartment buildings versus, doing their entire thing with that. So the day so far, Israel has not been shown the final text of the MOU. According to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, though senior U.S. officials said he had been briefed consistently on its substances. Iran will not receive broad sanctions relief simply by signing. Senior officials were empathetic on a press call that all sanctions removal is directly tied to nuclear performance. Iran has committed to destroying its enriched uranium stockpile at minimum through downblending under the IAEA supervision, a concession officials called a major win. Strait of Hormuz is set to reopen for toll-free commercial passage within 30 days. Iran had already stopped firing on vessels in the Strait of Hormuz before the signing call, the first such pause in 100 days of conflict. One immediate upside for Tehran does kick up upon signing a U.S. Treasury waiver on Iranian crude oil exports. Both sides have 60 days to reach a final deal to be endorsed by a binding UN Security Council resolution. Senior U.S. officials said the administration would know within days or weeks, not months, if Iran was stalling and was prepared to tighten economic pressure significantly if talks broke. Trump did negate the characterization later, telling reporters, "I don't view it as hard, just as long as they're behaving. I really don't care that much." So essentially, Trump is pretty much giving the Iranians what they want, but I think it's, again, rather necessary. I think it's rather important for this entire deal, really, to end this entire Iran war. Very important, actually. So again, these are just some clips from the G7 summit that we saw today, and a lot of big developments here. Trump humiliates Netanyahu at the G7 press conference after Iran MOU defiance. We are the big partner, and he is a very small partner, referring to Israel. I say you can do a little softer touch, Bibi. You don't have to knock down a building every time somebody walks into it that's from Hezbollah. So again, this is what he said here. Look at this clip.
But it's been an amazing partnership. But he will say, we're the big partner and he's the very small partner, and that's true. So happened, Israel would have been blown away. And in all fairness to Bibi Netanyahu, who happens to be a good man, gets a little excited sometimes. But he happens to be a very good man. We've had an amazing partnership. He's been
I think opinions would vary on that one.
Amazing prime minister. We have a little dispute over Lebanon. I say, you can do a little softer touch, Bibi. You don't have to knock down a building every time somebody walks into it that's from Hezbollah. But so he came to the country and he begged Barack Hussein Obama, the president, not to do the JCPOA. He said it could be the end of Israel, and it would have been if I didn't come along.
True.
And Obama didn't listen to him. Bibi actually went to Congress and pleaded with them, and he got nowhere. And they had this horrible deal that was horrible for Israel, horrible for Israel. They've been a good partner. Again, I think they could do better with respect to Hezbollah. I'm not saying they shouldn't protect themselves. I'm saying when 2 drones are shot into the desert and drop harmlessly, you don't have to knock down buildings in Beirut. They could behave better. And frankly, they could do a better job.
Look at Howard Lutnick. He hates
them as
that.
a partner. They were terrific. But they could do a much better job with Hezbollah. On that, I don't.
So again, that's just one little clip there, but there's a lot more clips. Again, from this entire G7 summit, this is where this took place in France. And again, buildings are being dropped on top of them, right alongside them. How would you like to live there?
Get it done. But I'd like to do it. I mean, you have people living there. Buildings are being dropped on top of them or right alongside of them. How would you like to live there? It's so unfair, especially...
Look at the body language of Marco Rubio and especially Howard Lutnick. They're not happy with this at all. So Howard Lutnick was chuckling and laughing up until this point in the entire speech, if you watch the entire speech. And then Rubio looks like he's just kind of sitting there, I don't know, just kind of not enjoying any of this.
Beirut, you know, you go into Beirut, and I looked at the scene 2 days ago, yesterday, where they hit. That was a big hit. That was unnecessary in my book. Yeah, please, get it done. But I'd like to do it.
It's honestly a crazy reversal when we're looking at where this war was just like days ago. Trump admits why he had no choice but to end the war. We would have to run out of oil reserves in about 4 weeks. That's crazy.
I know that. Now, if I did the opposite, if I went out and continued to bomb them for another 4, just bomb the hell out of them, I'd get bad press on that. No, there's nothing I can do. But what this does is it allows the ships to go. If we keep bombing, those ships won't be going. And you're talking about $500, $600, $700 million a day. It's a lot of money. A lot of money. That's why the world is okay. It's liquid. It's fine. Also, we run out of reserves in about 4 weeks. You know, there are reserves all over the world, and we would really run out. And there'll be a time when you wouldn't be able to get it. And you want to see bedlam? So for all those so-called geniuses that want to show me how smart they are, ask them why didn't they blow up General Soleimani? Ask that of the general and a couple of other people that I like very much, but boy, are they wrong. Go ahead.
I've never seen Rubio with more of a straight face during like all of these clips. Here's one more clip from this.
It's going to work. And he's actually done a very good job. Syria would love to do it. I was very responsible for the gentleman at Syria that's now the...
So again, a lot of people have been against this too, because they're saying that, well, they're not just saying that, that's true. The leader of Syria who's taking over, who Trump wants to take over Lebanon, essentially he has been funding a lot of terrorism, and essentially these groups are really no worse than the Israelis when it comes to violence and when it comes to the level of taking out Christians and things like that. But my stance is, really, I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out. But I'd rather see anybody else but Israel control southern Lebanon, because Israel is just refusing to adhere to any of this ceasefire, and it's harming the United States. It's harming our ability to really get anything done. And so ultimately, it's something that we need to be really careful about when we look at all of this. Again, who really knows? But ultimately, what do you guys think? I think that we are in a position where we have to be really careful about where we're going with all of this. So again, what do you think? Leave your thoughts below. But this is just one little clip.
A tremendous job. He's put that country together in a year and a half. Sort of like our country, a year and a half. It's pretty similar size. They said, please don't put him there. He's a very violent man. Al-Qaeda. I said, well, I know one thing, a Boy Scout's not going to work. And he's actually done a very good job. He'd love to go in, and you know, Hezbollah's an enemy of his, and he'd go in, but he wouldn't knock down buildings every time he hears there's somebody. He'd just go and get them with precision. But I don't know that people want that. Maybe they don't. Maybe Lebanon doesn't. We have to be guided a little bit by Lebanon. And by the way, the president, Syria would love to do it.
Something to think about.
Very responsible for.
So again, when we look at this, who knows how that's going to go with Syria and really this entire war. But ultimately, I think it's going to be rather interesting to see where this all goes. I think it's going to be rather interesting to see how this all develops over time, and whether or not this is actually going to be a winning outcome for the United States. It kind of all depends on Israel, in my opinion, and whether or not Trump is actually going to push back in the case that Israel doesn't comply with the entire ceasefire and all of this. Ultimately, that's what's going to decide the real determination and future of this war. So what do you think is going to happen with all of this? Again, I think it's going to be quite interesting at the end of the day, but maybe that's just me. So what do you think? Ultimately, I think it's going to be quite the development. So again, here's one more clip of Trump basically talking more about this. He downgraded Israel from our greatest ally to a very small partner. This was huge. And this is what Mike Huckabee was saying. This is what all of these politicians were not too happy about when they looked at all of it. Rather interesting to see it. So again, when you look at this, what do you think? But I think it's going to be quite interesting. And we're waiting for it to load. Loading.
It's been an amazing partnership. But he will say, we're the big partner and he's the very small partner, and that's true. So, but it's been an amazing...
We're the big partner, they're the small partner. That's true. America is the number one. And that is something that the Israelis need to understand. And what was funny is that you had Mike Huckabee, the ambassador to Israel for the United States, working for the United States. I think he should just stay there in Israel personally. But when you look at all of this, it's interesting because Mike Huckabee had said, without Israel, we could never live. America could never exist without Israel. And so it's just crazy. You're seeing all these people. Mark Levin was one of them saying, just a total Israel hawk, just saying, without Israel, there would be no America. There would be no United States. And it's just like, yeah, that's a total lie, though. It's the other way around.
A long time together today. I spoke to...
With Noom, you can get started
and
on
an ad.
GLP-1 program for just $79.
So again, this is just more...
But it doesn't just stop there.
This is just more news on the Ukraine-Russia war at this point. Trump claims Moscow is losing more troops than Kiev, as he admits Putin is on the offensive.
Spoke to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia a number of times. They're all so happy that they're still... You have to have them happy too, you know. We're using their airports. Not that they could stop us if we didn't want them to, but it'd be nice that I went to get that little sucker. But I missed. I hate missing. But we spoke to all of them and many countries all over the world.
Honestly, it's going to be interesting. So again, here's one more clip. This is Vladimir Zelenskyy.
He said today that everybody wants this war to end. Do you think that includes Vladimir Putin?
No, I'm not sure that Putin wants to finish this war in such situation where he's and where his army, with losses and without goals he wanted to have at the very beginning of this war. He really doesn't want. But their economy is really tight, and their army is very tight. But also, our army is also tight. So we are honest, and we speak about it.
Keep asking for more money,
Zelenskyy. What we
honestly.
can with our soldiers, and they do their best. But 35,000, as I said today.
Square handheld is a game changer. You literally can use it.
And
with
more
one hand.
ads.
It feels familiar.
Gotta love
it's very
that.
intuitive. It just makes the operation more efficient.
If the power goes
Here we
down,
go.
we're able to operate.
35,000 dead Russian soldiers per month. And the number will increasing. And this is, big losses. It's up to them to continue the war or not. But we want
What's up
to
with his
stop
eyes?
this war.
Looks like he's been on something.
That's why I think President Trump can. He really can, because he has dialogue with Putin. Not everybody has dialogue, just even dialogue. He has dialogue with Putin on the same levels. I think America is much stronger than Russia, and you can see the result of this war.
And so again, there is Zelenskyy essentially, pretending like this is all just, hey, keep giving us money. Zelensky's been asking for money from the United States and the EU for quite a long time now. Pretty much expecting everybody else to pay for this war. And it's definitely not okay. So again, what do you think? Leave your comments. Ultimately, I think it's pretty insane. Donald Trump has said that Vladimir Putin needs the war in Ukraine to end as Moscow is losing more troops than Kiev. That's not true. Speaking at the G7 summit, the U.S. president described Russia as the offensive party in the conflict in the apparent shift in his stance towards the end of the war. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy and his allies came to the G7 hoping to convince Trump that Ukraine's fight back is delivering results and that Russia is in no position to dictate terms for any peace deal. Not true. Trump showed a real change in approach regarding the war. French President Emmanuel Macron said earlier in the day other European leaders made similar comments. The U.S. president said he had a very good meeting with President Zelenskyy and called on Russia to make peace with Ukraine. Trump's comments followed a joint leaders' statements that could bolster Kiev's growing leverage in potential peace talks with Moscow, and to support and accelerate this new momentum, we agree to increase the delivery of air defense capacities, additional systems, and interceptors and long-range capabilities, a joint statement read. So again, Ukraine and Russia, when we look at that entire war, it's just going on and on and on. When we look at the Jerusalem Post, this was just an article from there, seeing what's going on in Israel today. Sentiment value is a beautiful drama of redemption and a show of Biz family. So again, Maccabi Tel Aviv takes lead in final series with win in first game. So again, not a lot of big news in Israel. A lot of what we've been looking for today is just how Israel's really responding to this entire peace deal. Netanyahu holds the first working meeting with new Mossad Chief Goffman. Netanyahu met Mossad Chief Roman Goffman for the first time in an official working session since he took over the intelligence agency earlier this month. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and new Mossad Director Roman Goffman held their first regular one-on-one working meeting on Wednesday night. Goffman took over the spy agency from David Barnea on June 2nd. The new Mossad chief's prior role was at Netanyahu's personal military secretary for around the last 2 years, such as both parties are already highly familiar with each other. However, if Goffman's old role was to serve close to Netanyahu's side at almost all times and to be a deliverer and vetter of information between the prime minister and others in the defense establishment, the Mossad chief's new role involves managing a huge agency of thousands of operatives in Israel and across the globe. The Jerusalem Post understands that Goffman has already taken strong stances in war cabinet meetings, including during the recent debate regarding the war and peace with Iran and Lebanon. As Mossad Chief, Goffman will, in many ways, be the lead Israeli officer managing the Iran file, certainly in time periods when there is no open war. Interesting. So in time periods where there is no open war. So what does that mean? So right now, we are in no open war. Does that mean that they're just going to plan on striking kind of under the shadows? Because that is the way the Mossad operates. The Mossad, if you know anything, is the CIA of Israel. Goffman committed to bringing down the Islamic regime. In his opening speech, he committed to bringing down the Islamic regime, though that was before President U.S. Donald Trump cut a new deal with Iran, which would likely provide tens of billions or even hundreds of billions in funds to the regime in exchange for some concessions on the nuclear file in the coming months and years. Both critics and supporters view Goffman as bright and daring, with critics afraid he will drift into unwise operations and supporters hoping he will achieve new goals that others thought were too hard to accomplish. So again, that is just some news coming out of Israel today in Jerusalem. Again, from the Jerusalem Post, Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner turn heads at ultra-exclusive Miami Grand Pierre. So again, lots of information coming out of Israel, lots of information coming out of this 14-point deal with Iran, and really a lot of information coming out with all of it. So again, the question is, how is the world going to respond to it? And ultimately, that's kind of what I see to be the most interesting. So again, we look at all these different clips, we see how things have been developing, and it's looking good for the United States since now we have a chance to actually restore our economic prowess.
If there's a real deal.
So again, I wanted to play this clip. This is John Kiriakou, or something like that. And he is a former CIA agent. This guy basically exposed the HB1, what was it again? Pull up the comment here. HB 187, which was basically written into law in June of 2024, making the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism official state law. This broadens how the state identifies and combats perceived hate against Jews, including certain criticisms of Israel. Supporters hail it as a production amid rising incidents. Critics call it an unlawful and unconstitutional free speech violation, which it is. Here's the story behind the controversy.
In Miami, Florida, and just about 2 months ago, Governor Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, pushed through the Florida legislature a bill making it a criminal offense to criticize Israel.
This is real, by the way.
Criminal offense.
Not fake.
Obviously, clearly unconstitutional. So it'll have to work its way through the courts. But right now, it is a felony to criticize Israel. So I happened to be here about 4 weeks ago, and a woman just nearby the studio in Miami Beach wrote a Facebook post criticizing Israel on purpose. The very next day, police, did you post this thing in Israel on Facebook criticizing Israel? She said, yes, I did. You're under arrest. Well, not only did the Florida legislature pass this ridiculous bill into law, Governor DeSantis didn't sign it right away. Instead, once it was passed, he flew to Israel, signed it in the presence of Benjamin Netanyahu, and then gave Netanyahu the pen as a souvenir.
That's absolutely wild.
I'm confused as to what country I'm living in these days.
Yeah, it's almost like a humiliation ritual. I mean, Randy Fine was supportive of that as well. I mean, he helped pass the anti-Semitism laws. And the crazy thing is, if you were to say the things that he say about Muslims, about Jews, you would be in jail.
Oh, yeah. I'd be in jail. That's right.
How is that not the height of hypocrisy?
Insane. So again, that's just a little bit of insight into the Florida new laws that are being passed and what Ron DeSantis is doing to Florida. The beautiful state of Florida is now a state where you cannot criticize the state of Israel. And depending on what you say, if it's too harsh, and if it maybe questions the genocide happening in Gaza or Lebanon, or the illegal settlements happening in Gaza or Lebanon, maybe that's against the law in Florida. Maybe you get in trouble for that. Depends on how this all runs through the courts, as John Kiriakou said. But ultimately, to say the least, it's very interesting to see how our rights are being tampered with so aggressively. So again, a lot of other information too. So again, this was the original post from Trump, basically saying he put Syria's leader in power. Here's more context behind that story. This was just yesterday.
If Israel attacks Lebanon,
it can, and I consider that the minor war. Iran's a big one, but we have a little pinprick out there that constantly rears its head, and that's Hezbollah. And, I was very responsible for Syria, and the man that's running Syria now is a person that I put there along with President Erdogan and some others. He's done an amazing job of pulling it together. He's not a Boy Scout, but he's done an amazing job of pulling it together.
Love the hands.
And the
Trump hands.
Is very good with Hezbollah, does not like them. And I'll tell you what, Israel's fighting Hezbollah too long, and too many people are being killed. And you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody, because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses, and they're not all Hezbollah, that I can tell you. And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah. Because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it.
Is Netanyahu on board with
And I didn't like Syria. I didn't like where 2 hours before we're signing the agreement that there was an attack in Lebanon, in Beirut. It was right in, it wasn't like in the southern side, and it was in Beirut. I did not like that. I let them know that. I didn't like it, not at all. But I think that Syria, he's pulled that country together amazingly quickly. He's very capable. And he's been very good for me. He's protected everything that I've asked for, he's done. And if Israel can't do the job without killing everyone else, he'll do the job. Syria will do the job.
So again, basically Trump is saying that there's too much death and unwarranted death on civilians and too many civilian casualties being done. Again, a whole entire apartment complexes, entire villages being wiped out. And again, when we look at the Maritime maps, you can see all of this on the Maritime maps. You see all of it. So again, all of this is real. So how is this entire Iran war and all of these developments, this entire 14-point peace plan that we went over at the beginning of this episode, how has it affected the oil prices? Well, as we can see, it's affected them rather nicely. the markets in the United States, at least, are going pretty good. The WTI crude is at $76.01. Brent crude's at $79.55. Murban crude's at $74.31 a barrel. And natural gas is at $3.16. Meanwhile, the Dow Jones closed at 500 points lower as Warsh's first Fed meeting set off surge in bond yields. So again, stocks fell on Wednesday while Treasury yields surged as investors grew uncertain over the path of monetary policy over several Federal Reserve officials, indicating there could be a rate hike this year to tamp down on inflation. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 507 points, or 90.98%, after earlier hitting a fresh all-time intraday record. The index's third consecutive high. The S&P 500 lost 1.21%, while the NASDAQ Composite shed 1.34%. So again, stock market is pretty much as at bay today. Nothing really too new when it comes to that. So again, when we look at the crypto market, a lot of big developments happening there. Again, really waiting down on the Clarity Act, but essentially the Clarity Act is now going to be pushed ahead a little bit further than it was before. So we were looking at July 4th for the Clarity Act. Now they pretty much kicked the can down the road again towards late July after the Senate recess period, which is when they're going to basically take their little vacation kind of thing. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're pretty much going to expect to see this Clarity Act, the Senate Ethics Committee markup hearing date, which is where we'll learn the truth. What's going to happen with crypto? Where does everything happen with Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP? Where does all of this come into play? What does the future have in store? It all depends on what happens with this Clarity Act. So again, Bitcoin today is at $64,373. Ethereum's at $1,746, and XRP's at $1.18. So again, as much as the market's a little bit down recently, and the fear and greed index is way down at 22, so people are in fear. But ultimately, I think we have a lot of positive things, right? Just with good news, you see these markets move up drastically. So again, and overall, we're waiting on the Clarity Act. Nothing happens in crypto until we hear about the actual Clarity Act. So we'll see what happens with all of that. But ultimately, time will tell, and ultimately that will be the real deciding factor. So one more clip from Trump that I wanted to play. This is Trump visibly frustrated when he learned from a reporter that the Federal Reserve has decided to leave interest rates unchanged. So again, hard to believe, Trump said in his own words.
You see the Fed decision, they held rates today. Did you see that?
It's all right. Whatever.
And it looks like they might even raise them later this year. It's not clear. Do you have any comments?
It could happen. I mean, it's hard to believe. It just keeps a country down, you know, it's so unusual. But we have a very good guy over there now, so I'm guided by what he wants.
We'll see.
His first time? Yeah, I don't know. I saw a statement. It just came out.
So again, that was Trump commenting on really what's happening with the Federal Reserve, how they basically left interest rates unchanged, and that we're still looking at interest rates somewhere at around 3.5%. And so interesting to see where those markets are taking things. And again, you look at the comments, people are not happy. Damn it, no one can buy a effing house these days, killing Americans with interest. Damn it, the one thing I was looking forward to so we could refi. He may not like the decision, but he respects the new Fed chair. That sounds fair to me. They hate it when he doesn't act like a totalitarian. Yeah, a lot of people weren't really feeling good about this Kevin Warsh guy and the new guy basically taking over the Federal Reserve, but we'll see what happens. Well, if they raised them, this is again from, I'm reading comments off in this. Well, if they raised them, Trump would be pissed. If they lowered them, everyone would say it was because Trump ordered them to. Just kick the ball till next time and play it safe. If Trump doesn't like high interest rates, he may want to pass on the Nets-Israeli war that skyrockets energy rates and inflation. American inflation is at Biden numbers now, unforgivable. So nobody's really on board with, the BS when it comes to this. People want markets that make sense. So again, I also wanted to look at the maritime traffic and what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz. We always look at that on this show. And ultimately, it's important to see how these patterns are developing and changing over time. If you go on my YouTube channel, you can track some of what we've been watching here for the past few weeks and kind of how all of this has kind of made an impact. right? So when we look at the Strait of Hormuz, typically we've been seeing absolutely no vessels, no ships in this area where my cursor is. There's been nothing in this entire area. Now there is. So basically, we do have a little bit more movement. Granted, a lot of these are Iranian vessels that you're going to see, offshore structures. Again, we have a Handala pleasure craft. That's been there for the past 48 hours now, pretty much sitting in the same place. Again, we have another offshore structure, the Jersey Devil Ray. So again, this was also here yesterday, same spot. Nothing has really changed. Oh. And when we look at these, this again, we also have Iranian vessels right next to those American vessels there. And it's actually rare when you look at the maritime traffic or marinetraffic.com, you typically won't see American vessels just out in the open like this on AIS. Typically, they'll be hidden from AIS just because the U.S. has the strongest Navy. And so we have all this leverage. And so we don't really need, so we're able to usually hide our vessels. Now we're not really able to do that with some of these. Granted, those were pleasure crafts. Those aren't crude oil tankers. What we need to pay attention to when you look at maritime traffic is your red dots here on the map, or these red triangles. These will be your crude oil tankers, your liquefied natural gas tankers, and this is what really counts. This is where the blockade's pretty much been set in the Strait of Hormuz to essentially stop any kind of Iranian vessels going into the Strait of Hormuz or going out. So again, strategically, you see these U.S. vessels and different kinds of vessels. Yeah, right here, cargo vessels. Again, this vessel is out of coastal AIS range. So typically, that means that this is probably a U.S. Navy vessel. It could be any kind of submarine. It says a tanker right here, but it's not giving you complete details. So these are probably American vessels, given the fact that they have power over that AIS and not being able to be tracked there, right? So again, you look at all these different countries. Crude oil tankers everywhere. A lot of our proxy vessels that we're using, LPG tankers, LNG tankers, and they all like to hang out here near Fujairah because, one, this is where a lot of the blockade is happening, and two, insurance companies are keeping these ships right in this area typically. These little clusters that you can see pretty much over the period of a few weeks now, maybe about a month or longer. We've seen pretty much no movement in this area. We've been seeing these same red clusters. Again, all these red clusters here. The dots are anchored vessels. The triangles are moving vessels. And all of these vessels, like Liberia, that's a Stoic Warrior crude oil tanker. That's a Liberian flag that you see right there. It looks like the American flag, but that's a Liberian flag. And this flag is essentially telling us that, if you know anything, the Liberian tankers are typically used as proxy vessels of the United States. We've been pretty much controlling a lot of those vessels for a long time. Again, the Lion crude oil tanker, more Liberian vessels. So we use a lot of these as proxy vessels for America. So you have to pay attention to where these clusters really are. Again, Qatar, you see these often in these areas. A lot of traffic in Qatar. We've been seeing that for a while. You're always going to see traffic there just because there's a lot of U.S. military bases there. And again, same thing with Bahrain. We have a lot of military bases here. A lot of interesting developments and attacks that have been taking place here over the past few weeks. Insurers are not feeling safe with any crude oil tankers being in this area, if you notice. Very limited crude oil tankers here. We have Dammam, which is where you're seeing a lot of these other crude oil tankers still kind of anchored down. And then as we get more northward into the Persian Gulf, right in this spot, pretty much been the same for the past 113-day war that we've been seeing here. Anchored vessels, a lot of these U.S. vessels, and a lot of these vessels have pretty much been stuck there. Again, we don't see a lot of traffic around Karg Island. Pretty much all of these vessels you see here are Iranian oil tankers, multi-purpose offshore vessels, and things like that. Because again, Karg Island is a big island for imports and exports for power and energy. So that's kind of what you need to focus on there. And this is what the U.S. military wants to really take, because when you look at this, obviously, as you can see, there is, a little bit of an advantage. There's an advantage to having control over these import-export zones. But the problem is, small little target when Iran's right next door, right? So when we look at this, all interesting stuff, very interesting developments we've been seeing. Very interesting. So, again, we also have to look at the western side of Saudi Arabia. And when we look at this, you're able to see the Red Sea over here, just on the border of Sudan, which is a big big portion of where we give about $30 million a year to Sudan just so we can control this area. And a lot of these vessels that you'll see here often will be American-controlled vessels, proxy vessels, crude oil tankers and things like that we will send to do a lot of trade on this side of the country. So again, when we look at a lot of these crude oil tankers and the traffic happening in the Red Sea, we see that straight line north to south. And again, we are starting to see more movement going through the Strait of the Suez Canal. So again, that's kind of interesting. Still have a lot of anchored vessels, and we still have very, very limited traffic here. So again, you can't directly see any of these vessels moving through the Strait of, the Suez Canal. Port Said still has a lot of anchored crude oil tankers and LNG tankers in this area. Oh, when we look at this, pretty wild. You look at Israel, you look at the West Bank, they still have trade coming into this area. Pretty limited for now. Cyprus, a lot of controlled Israeli territory over here. And again, you have Beirut and southern Lebanon, the Golan Heights, which is what the Israelis have been targeting. From Tyre to Odessa, upwards of mid-southern Lebanon, Nabatea. So again, when we look at Odessa, you can literally see just an example of these different villages that have been getting attacked. I always show this village because it's quite interesting. It really says right here on the border, the Odessa-Israel observation point. And here, what is the observation point? An entire destroyed village. So, very interesting. Lebanese destroyed village. Look at that. You can literally see smoke from the sky, the coloration of the clouds showing us that these are smoke clouds. You have buildings pillaged, completely destroyed, collapsed to the ground. You have literal tankers right here on satellite, as we can see where my cursor is. And these are literally tankers, Israeli tanks. So we can see that a lot of construction, new earth is being seen here. And as you can see, it's not hard to tell that all these different buildings have been bombed to the ground. And it's all over the place when you look at these different areas around the country. Again, Tyre, one of the most ancient cities of Israel, has also been attacked by Israel. And again, Tyre, Lebanon, is one of the most ancient cities of Lebanon. And Israel has been bombing it like crazy, pushing these civilians northward. But what is north? Well, we have Beirut. Just north of Tyre, you have Beirut. And a lot of strikes have been happening here in the past few weeks. And pretty hard strikes, too. So, active wars happening in Lebanon and southern Lebanon, all the way up to northern Lebanon. And eventually, they want to take Turkey, which is just across the Mediterranean here. So, very interesting. What do you think is going to happen? Ultimately, when we look at the Strait of Hormuz, we have signs that there are still traffic. The traffic is beginning to move up a little bit. There's continuing traffic going up over time. And we still have this congestion over the southern tip of Africa here, telling us that nothing has really changed too much. Everybody in the insurance companies especially are really waiting on the developments of this entire war. And what's going to happen with this 14-point peace plan, the 60 days ceasefire, that's what we're going to be keeping our eyes on. Okay, so when we look at all these different prices, again, back to crypto, Illinois Governor Pritzker has signed a 0.2% tax on crypto transactions into law, including transfers between personal wallets, with the Crypto Council for Innovation calling it the most punitive digital asset tax in the country. So if you want to get rich in crypto, get a job and save up $3,000, convert it all into USDC, put it into a 5-year yield, DeFi protocols, earn a free $1,000 each month, hell yeah, and invest the profits back in. You can retire in 3 to 4 years doing this. So again, a lot of people are, taking advantage of it. Breaking, the Fed just officially paused rate cuts until 2027. Inflation is heating up, and the new Fed chair, Kevin Warsh, is now preparing markets for interest rate hikes. This is not looking good for the markets. Well, we'll see what happens. With this Iran war, if we're able to get out of this war, we might see some more positive developments with all of this. And again, we have a lot of different signs telling us that these markets are going to have to go up at some point. You know, they're going to print more money. They're going to bail out the banks, and all of these things are going to happen. And you're going to see the market kind of come back to the same level of equilibrium. All of these things are going to happen. That's usually what they do. So again, some other breaking news. Or not yet, I guess. Gold prices, $4,274 an ounce. Silver's at $68.34 an ounce. So again, if you're a gold investor, something to pay attention to there. And then we also have some of our more viral videos we've been seeing on X. So I wanted to go through some of these. We are at war against, this is President Vladimir Putin of Russia. Regardless of what you think about Russia, this is very true. We are at war against Satanism, the occult, and sorcery. Vladimir Putin. Russia, China, and Iran are not the true enemy. The true enemy is the Rothschild Khazarian mafia. And who are the Khazarians? The Jews.
I truly agree with you. Satanism and occult services, sorceries, this is nonsense. That is something that confuses people, brings them to darkness, and affects them greatly. Affects their psyche, their morale, and we need to fight against it, but do it carefully without violating human rights. Your colleagues have mentioned it.
So it is interesting that Putin says this right when the Russians attacked a Ukrainian church the other day. And I'm not really defending either side. The Ukrainians and the Russians, they do need to end this war. There are too many people dying. Too many Ukrainians dying, really. The Ukrainians are really taking the larger blow, despite what Fox News and the mainstream media will tell you. Ukrainians have been getting hit hard by the Russians. And ultimately, the Russians should end the war just because it is in favor of their own economy. Ultimately, they're not going to just let Ukraine lob in FPV drones into their entire country. So they're going to do something about that. But at the same time, again, no war can be won when it comes to attrition. And so somebody's got to, call it. And I think Zelenskyy should really just concede the war, and Putin should just honestly do what he has to do, as a leader, at least, from a leadership standpoint. So when we talk about Satanism, you look at these kind of videos and you really see that. South Africa is no longer a civilized country. It only took 30 years to go from one world's strongest nation to total collapse. America is your future. America, this is your future if you don't stand your ground. And I completely agree. So check this clip out. This is South Africa. We were just showing South Africa on the Maritime maps, where a lot of Navy vessels are moving right now. Pretty scary stuff. Ironically, it says, have a safe day. 24/7 guards on patrol. 24/7 CCTV monitoring. Armed response on site. Interesting. And then, in that video, you see total chaos. A little bit wild. So this is also historic. This comes from the Inevitable West account. I wanted to highlight this. Not many understand how much of a major inflection point in history this is. If you had said in 2020 that MEPs would be chanting "send them back" during a parliamentary hearing session in 6 years' time, they would have looked at you like you're crazy. So this is a huge development. They're saying no to mass migration.
Concessions on tariff rate
telling them to go back home.
Vote on consent by roll call vote. The vote is open.
Send them back. And that is what they're saying. So a lot of big things going on. Meanwhile, on U.S. soil, we had Chris Menhan, who posted this, a clip of Mark Levin pushing back against President Trump's and touted Israel not so secretive nuclear weapons. Israel has some very, very powerful weapons that it has not used. It's a secret that's not so secretive, and they've had them for decades. Israel will survive, period. So what is this suggesting? So what is Mark Levin suggesting? First, let's listen to the clip and actually what he has to say here.
I strongly disagree with something the president said today. I heard him say one other time, too, which is, if we hadn't attacked Iran, Israel would not exist. It would have been destroyed. That's simply not true.
I don't know about that.
It's simply not true. For 12 days, Israel fought a year ago
barely
against
won.
The Iranian regime before we did. Destroyed its ground-to-air missiles, destroyed its Soviet and /Russian radar systems, destroyed much of its air force, destroyed much of any of its defenses.
Thanks to the United States and our military and our tax dollars that paid for it to happen.
For 12 days. We went in on the 13th day with our great bombers and those bombs, and we hit those nuclear sites. But Israel has some very, very powerful weapons.
There it is. What, the Samson Option? 90 to 200 nuclear warheads? Spies that you go in and they go in with Mossad and they infiltrate and they blackmail politicians on other nations' soils. I mean, yeah, this is what the CIA does, you could argue. But ultimately, that is how the Israelis win, and that's how they've had so much influence over our entire government. This is what they do. They spy on our politicians, and that's the way they win.
It has not used. I don't know this firsthand. Just go online and read about it.
Like Jonathan Pollard.
It's a secret that's not so secretive.
Like Jonathan Pollard.
They've had him
90 to 200 nuclear warheads. If you do the research, you can find it. Like Mark said here, I mean, he's not lying. You can find that the Israelis do have a pretty good stockpile of nuclear armory and nuclear efficiency.
For decades. Israel will survive.
We'll see. Ultimately, at the end of the day, with the way they're going, they're destroying all of their alliances, which is not smart. You know, the Americans never gained power and we never became a superpower as the United States by basically playing that way, you know. Yes, we asserted our will on, you know, the American soil here when the Native Americans came, but at the end of the day, the Native Americans also, when they were living here, they were made up of completely different tribes, and they were scalping each other, raping each other's women. All of these things were completely normal. And at the end of the day, when the Americans came here, or you could call them the Europeans actually at that time, before America was America, again, they came over here and they brought different kind of innovations. They brought horses and gunpowder. They brought you know, coffee and all of these different things, salt and all of these different remedies that created a pretty great society. You know, we built civilization essentially in the United States when we came here. You know, we built currency, we built monetization, monetary policy. All of these things were built by the European, and ultimately the George Washingtons, the John Adams, all of your founding fathers that you read about. So, you know, it's debatable. If America hadn't been involved all this time, would Israel still exist? Maybe, maybe not. It would kind of depend on Israel and their willingness to comply with other countries, to assimilate, and to, you know, what an actual peace, you know, seeking nation would be. And ultimately, Israel, based on their behaviors and their actions of just completely attacking anybody who opposes them, or any nation who is non-Jews, very much like the Muslims do. Anybody who's non-Muslim, they get conquered. Well, why is that okay? You know. And ultimately, if Israel was to play that way, even without the United States and our this entire entanglement, you would see Israel probably, you know, get wiped off the map. And I'm not saying that we want that to happen, but that's probably what would happen by either the Iranians and, you know, a lot of these different countries surrounding them.
At Bob's Steak and Shop.
So again, Chud the Builder, if anybody has been following this case, Chud the Builder now has no bond and will be held for trial. Carmelo Anthony stabbed his classmate to death and got bond. We live in a country where if you are black and you get to have certain privilege, we live in a country, if you're black, you get to have certain privileges. White people do not.
Happening now, the controversial online streamer known as Chud the Builder is making an appearance in a Nashville courtroom. Dalton Etherly faces 3 misdemeanor charges stemming from a May incident at Bob's Steak and Chop House inside the Omni Hotel. Investigators say Etherly live streamed inside the restaurant after staff asked him not to, then refused to pay. Etherly also faces separate felony charges in Montgomery County for a shooting investigation. During Etherly's court appearance, one investigator on the stand recalled the shooting.
Shots are shown to be fired prior to them hitting the ground.
Shots are being shown to have been fired prior to that?
Yes.
And how do we know that?
I can see, or in the courthouse video, it shows the casing ejecting from the firearm. It also shows the ricochet off the concrete planter.
Okay.
Prior to them hitting the ground.
So Mr. Fox hadn't been hit at that point, correct? if you're seeing a ricochet in one casing?
I would assume so.
The judge denied Etherly's release today, citing violent posts he's made on social media. Etherly is also facing a $1 million bond in the Montgomery County case.
And meanwhile, Carmelo Anthony got 35 years prison. He got like a $250,000 bond for literally actually killing somebody, stabbing a young man, Austin Metcalf, in his heart when he was in Austin Metcalf's tent. Not their tent, not even his tent, on the wrong side of the field. And again, 15 different witnesses saying, hey, get out of our tent, Carmelo, get out of our tent, Carmelo Anthony. And Carmelo Anthony says, make me. And then basically provoking a reaction, Austin Metcalf then pushes the Carmelo Anthony. And Carmelo Anthony, what is the logical response? Oh, well, he grabs a knife and stabs it into his heart. And that's apparently being celebrated. That's like, okay. And so that just goes to show there is such a double standard in this country when it comes to this entire racial divide. And really, we need to have unification. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we don't condone violence or any of these things. And right now, all of the supporters of Carmelo Anthony are supporting violence when we need to actually condemn violence, which is actually, ironically, what Chud the Builder was doing in his message that was part of his project, of this free speech project. So, very interesting to say the least. Dominic Trzynski, MEP, this is my victory today. We won. Send them back. Be like Poland. 100%.
Mrs. Brigmont on the EU-Pakistan agreement modification of concessions on tariff rate quotes. Vote on consent by roll call vote. The vote is open.
Yeah, we do need to send them back, though. We do need to send back all of these illegal immigrants. 100%. There's more footage of that. Crazy. The divide is just insane. The European Parliament erupts as periodic MEPs chant, send them back after a directive to make deporting illegal immigrants easier is approved. Pretty great. And meanwhile, as we were just talking about Carmelo Anthony, this is a new trend that we're seeing. Blacks have started a trend called the Austin Bop, stabbing my chest, where users take a knife and imitate Austin's stabbing. The song was released by 600 Noti with a photo of Austin Metcalf holding a sign saying, I learned my lesson. How evil. So again, I don't want to get copyright. When we look at this, it's just so evil. This is like a new trend on TikTok of, black people, and not all black people, of course, but they're celebrating this murder that took place on Austin Metcalf's life. Using an AI image of him holding a sign that says, I learned my lesson. Absolutely disgusting. And they're dancing and celebrating this young man's death. He was a 4.0 student in school. He was a great star athlete in football. Like, truly, everybody loved him in his school. And even the motto for his entire death was just praised, And so, again, it's very, very sad. And it's a terrible thing to see this kind of behavior. People celebrating this. So, pure evil in every sense of the form. Trump humiliates Netanyahu at the G7 conference. We covered that. So again, Trump talks about the Space Force here.
Cameras on every
from Nick Sortor on X.
But I'm proud of Space Force because I started it. We have Space Force cameras on every single door, well, there are no doors. They've been pretty well shattered. But every area of that, if somebody walks in and he's got a badge with his name on it, like Mohammed something, which is about a 50-50 guess, Mohammed something. They can tell the name. They can give you a serial number. We can see things you wouldn't believe, the quality of the stuff that we have. That's why we've been so successful. That's why our blockade will go down in the annals of history as being unbelievable. Nobody's ever seen a blockade like that. It's like a steel wall.
Nobody's ever seen a blockade like that. It's huge. It's perfect. Gotta love Trump. This is a clip of Joe Rogan basically saying the Jews control the media and they control me. He also accuses Alex Jones of being a Fed.
Lay down, GI. You'll never win. There's no hope.
Federal agent, dude.
That's how we save America.
That's how we get it. But dude, we're never gonna save it if they control CBS, NBC, Fox, and ABC.
The agent.
And they control all the newspapers.
Yes, federal agent.
Ever do anything?
Lay down, GI. You'll never win. There's no hope.
federal agent, dude.
Federal agent? How dare you call me such...
Clearly, the Jews control the media and they control me.
No, they don't.
They do.
No, that's a whole nother shill level. See, there's whole levels of propaganda and film you have to go through.
Really?
Yes. Last time I checked, it's public knowledge that George Bush Sr.'s third cousin, Queen Elizabeth, and they're worth trillions, but we hear that they're worth nothing, and it's this nice family from Texas.
Do they still talk?
What?
They still talk?
Actually, they do meet routinely. They just met earlier this year over in France for the Bilderberg conference.
Wait, but George,
Queen Elizabeth
made the big stink when he kissed Queen Elizabeth on the
Jews
lips.
don't control the media? Every Jew that I know is like in television. They're all really smart and rich. They don't control the media. They're like producing all these shows and shit. That's not real.
I think you're baiting Jew, isn't he?
It's like Aaron Spelling, that kind of thing?
It's true.
I think they're all very wealthy Jewish guys. They're pretty much controlling the
I don't know. I looked at my Forbes 500
Oh,
list of richest people, and they're not.
Yeah, but television
Maybe
producers.
2 or 3 are Jews.
Television producers are so many. I know so many Jewish guys that are television producers.
Yeah.
You don't think that that's like Jews controlling the media? That's
600 years ago in England or France, they had their pogroms.
Pogrom.
Pogroms?
Yeah. They would.
Pilgrims?
Exactly. Yeah. Pilgrims do.
Pilgrims control.
They would have what they call purges.
Well, now we know, man.
Printing press.
It's pronounced pogrom.
Yeah, I know. Well, we're from Texas.
All right. How does pussy fit into the New World Order?
They would set up. Well, I need to answer your question.
Okay.
If you really read the scholarly.
Isn't that the ultimate form of control?
Scholarly. I'll answer your question. Okay.
So again, that's Alex Jones and Joe Rogan, long time ago. Crazy to see that. Section 1217 of the forthcoming Senate NDAA, which is the National Defense Authorization Act, would require the Secretary of Defense to establish a U.S.-Israel Defense Technology Initiative in consultation with Israel's defense minister to identify Israel-origin technologies for potential integration into U.S. military systems. So again, this is the part of the bill, establishment of the United States-Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative. The Secretary of Defense, in consultation with the Minister of Defense of Israel, shall establish a cooperative initiative to be known as the United States-Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative, the USIDTCI. So that's what they will probably call it, to expand and accelerate bilateral defense technology research, development, testing, evaluation, coordination, and industrial cooperation. Pretty crazy. Thomas Massey can be mad. Thomas Massey posted this. You can be mad at me for telling you these lies, but these are lies. I will not prove FISA without the Save America Act going along with it. I'm against FISA if it doesn't come with the Save America Act full version firmly attached to it. It's a trick for the weak. So again, a few Democrats are against the FISA with or without Bill Pulte going to DNI as acting. What kind of deal is that? Besides, I'm against FISA. It doesn't come with the Save America Act firmly attached to it. And then you look at this over here, another Truth Social post from Trump, basically contradicting everything here. So again, another big story was Israeli Minister Ben-Gvir. We cannot stop destroying houses in southern Lebanon, he says. We cannot stop, period. We cannot allow the population of southern Lebanon to return. We must continue to control the territory even if Trump disagrees. Wow. So does that not sound like everything you heard in Gaza? To me, it's the same thing.
להמשיך לפעול גם בניגוד לעמדה של ארצות הברית, כי אנחנו מדינה עצמאית ואנחנו לא יכולים להפסיק להרוס בתים בדרום לבנון.
We're an independent country and we cannot stop demolishing houses in southern Lebanon. We cannot stop, not letting the population of southern Lebanon return. This endangers our soldiers. This endangers our residents. We must not let them to the borders, to what before the 10th bail, and we must continue to control the territory, even against President Trump's will. So again, Ben-Gvir, he's been pretty ruthless when it comes to the conquest of the Palestinians and then the people of Lebanon, because they want the Greater Israel Project, and that's what this is all about. But without the United States' support, and if Trump isn't down for it, and if Trump ends up actually pushing back against the Israelis, and if these Epstein files come out, and if Trump doesn't just basically give in to Israel to stop all of the noise over it, then Israel's going to be in a really bad spot. But we'll see what happens. Hillary Clinton said that even when she was Secretary of State, Netanyahu and his government repeatedly pushed the U.S. to support military action against Iran. It was relentless. It was a controlled it was a constant push. She recalled Israeli officials trying to convey urgency by saying, "Our planes are on the tarmac." Her response, "Well, good luck." When asked whether she felt she was being played by an ally that receives enormous U.S. aid, she replied. So let's take a listen to this clip.
There was a constant argument. Well, you're absolutely right. When I was secretary, it was a constant, theme by Netanyahu and his then government, the then defense minister Ehud Barak, the former prime minister. It was relentless. It was a constant push. I remember.
What would he say to you?
What?
What would he say to you?
He would basically say, you need to support us in attacking Iran. And back then, this was, 2009 to the end of 2012, we had more capacity than Israel did on several fronts to do that. And so there was a constant argument that we would have. And I remember one day, I was on the phone for hours with Ehud, with Bibi, with others, and they would say things like, our planes are on the tarmac. And I'd say, well, good luck. I mean, great. Why are you doing this?
Where else would planes be?
The Greater Israel Project.
Yes,
in the air.
But on the tarmac, ready to take off.
Okay.
Yes. Well, no, they'd be in the hangar, but they were on the tarmac. And you would say things.
You're saying you were being played
all the time. I mean,
by an ally that receives an enormous amount of aid.
Well, of course. And look, Bibi's been obsessed.
And so again, that was Hillary Clinton just commenting on how much Israel was even really trying to control the Democrats all this time. And I guess a lot of America was asleep and did not realize it. I don't believe humans built this now or ever. Either the simulation messed up or it was an artifact brought here from another one. So again, look at the old architecture that we used to have. Used to be created by a lot of the stonemasons. All of these beautiful Gothic churches and all of this architecture. Why? And then today we build like the most basic stuff. It's absolutely just like diabolical. Like, why are we not building this today? Or can we even build this today? One of the two possibilities exist. But to say the least, we need to bring back the standards. Europeans and American patriots, tomorrow the courts and my country, France, may decide to send me to prison for daring to say on television that the main danger to women in France is black, African, and Arab immigrant men. Meanwhile, my own attacker, a Tunisian migrant, is still at large. I need your help to generate media pressure and hope to be acquitted. They cannot silence the truth. So again, this is from Tais Desafan. That's definitely French. And when we look at this girl, poor girl. So again, let's listen to her story here.
Hello, dear.
This is happening all over Europe, by the way, not just France. This is happening in the UK, especially every single day. It's happening in Ireland now. It's happening in Germany now. It's happening in Sweden for sure. Happening in Norway. It's happening in almost every European wholesome country you can think of. Italy, Rome, all of it. Rome's a city in Italy. But when you look at all of these other, countries like Greece, you look at all of these different places, and they're being overtaken by Muslims. Spain, same thing. It's absolutely maniacal.
An American patriot, I need your help. Tomorrow, I may be sentenced to unsuspended prison for daring to say on French TV that the main danger to women in France comes from black, African, and Arab immigrant men, even though I was defending a woman who was herself raped by a Central African man subject to an OQTF order in the courtyard of her Paris apartment building. Having myself survived an attempted rape by a Tunisian migrant 4 years ago, I could not remain silent. But for having spoken these words on a television set, the prosecutor has sought a prison sentence against me. She dismissed our two stories as insignificant incidents which did not excuse my hate speech. Yet all...
How evil is this? Like, this is this is total tyranny, and anybody not speaking out against this is pure evil. Like this poor girl.
I did was describe a reality that most French people are afraid to speak about, precisely because the justice system is capable of convicting them for describing what they see with their own eyes and experience firsthand. This is the repression faced by people in France who speak the truth out loud. But thanks to you, I have hope ahead of the verdict, which will be handed down tomorrow. Just yesterday, I was still hesitating to publish my story, thinking nobody would notice, and it has now spread beyond our borders. And thanks to this media pressure, the justice system may back down before trying to send me to prison instead of our attack.
Look at how beautiful this girl is, and what's happening is just absolutely just so evil.
Please share this message. We are no longer afraid. We are not alone. The French people are not giving in and are standing strong.
So again, you have this beautiful girl full of life and raped by this third world low IQ immigrant, illegal immigrant, who was allowed into the doors of France, a once beautiful country, and basically rapes this beautiful girl and takes away her dignity, all of her innocence and humanity. And you still have the natives of this country, the liberals and the leaders of these countries, basically saying, oh no, you should not have said anything about it. That's hate speech. And that in itself means that you have no power. This is what happens in an unarmed society. These countries are highly unarmed. And because they are unarmed, they are not able to defend themselves against a tyrannical government, which is the pure point of the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. And this is why in America we are so lucky to have these rights, because if we didn't, this is what would be happening every single day in the United States of America, the same way it's happening in the United Kingdom. So all of this needs to be fought against, for sure. Absolutely insane. So again, that's pretty much all we have for this episode. When we look at all of this, this is pretty much the news we saw this weekend. A lot of big stuff happened and a lot of big strikes. But ultimately, what do you think about what's going on with this war? What do you think's going on with all of it? Ultimately, I think it's rather interesting to see where all of this is going and where all of these wars are really taking everybody. It's very interesting to see what are the true developments and where is the peace, right? Where is the justice in these countries? So again, what do you think? Be sure to leave your comments. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and leave your thoughts. Do you think that this is going to end? What about this Iran war, the 14-point peace plan? Do you think that this war is going to come to an actual end? In my opinion, I think it really depends on the United States. It depends on whether or not Trump is going to stick to America first and say what is true and stick with his guns. And ultimately, my biggest concern is that the more Epstein files are going to be released, unredacted, and a lot of what we haven't seen yet, and people are going to turn on Trump, and then they're going to choose Israel instead, and Israel is going to have all of this power over our country. And ultimately, I think, we need to be careful about just allowing these Israelis to run the narrative, right? Trump needs to fight back, and the Trump administration needs to push back against the Israelis. And again, this is all for specifically national security purposes. If not, then we will see an endless war with Iran, and this entire war will just pick back up again, and we in the United States will be caught in this 20-year war. So that's kind of where I see things going. Where do you think? Where do you see things going? Do you see this war ending soon, or do you see it ending never? So leave your thoughts. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And with that being said, I have nothing else, and see you next time.